to tonight's talk. So this is the seventh and final discussion about how mindfulness and can help us become happier. So over the previous 6 sessions, we've discussed how to elevate our levels of happiness through performing acts of kindness, practicing gratefulness, and cultivating and maintaining good relationships. So I hope you've tried some of those practices and see how it actually turns out for you. We talked about kindness, random acts of kindness, and also doing sort of being kind in daily life. So that's one thing. Then gratefulness, we talked about keeping a great gratitude journal where you write in it once a week, 5 things, thinking over the week that's passed, 5 things that you can be grateful for, and write in in some detail about it, specific. Then we also talked about cultivating and maintaining good relationships, how good relationships, authentic good relationships actually lead to a happier and healthier life. So if you want to know more about it, please check out our previous talks. They're all on Facebook, and I'm working to upload them on on YouTube. And then so there is also good hard science behind these 3 practices that I've talked about. They actually do work, and they've been fairly extensively researched. So they will, if you practice some or all these 3, there are more, but these are the 3 that I picked out because they seem to be the most simple to do and the easiest to understand. They will elevate your happiness. But one thing that I have to say, like perhaps a caveat, is that, unlike the Hollywood movies or Disney fairy tales, it doesn't mean that once you've done it well once, it will be happy ever after. In other areas of life, it is actually the same. Perhaps we are in sales and we hit the month's target, or we have managed to sell a property and we have a good commission. Can we actually sit back and kind of, take it easy and expect the next month to be the same? So, people would say obviously not, because you actually have to work to get it. So it's the same really with our happiness. It can be sustained, but as we have to put some time and effort into sustaining it. So investing our time into these practices that will maintain our happiness. It's like planting a seed of your favorite fruit tree, perhaps rambutan or durian, whatever, and you have to take care of it. You have to water it, you have to give it the proper kind of nutrients for it to grow, and you have to keep doing it on a daily basis. You have to water every day, make sure it's not too much or not too little, and then it will start to grow. And even after it starts to fruit, you still have to take care of it. It's an ongoing thing if you want to continue to enjoy the fruits of your tree. So, and if you do it well, you take care of your fruit tree well, then you can enjoy it for many years to come. So it's the same with our choice to be happy. We have to spend some time to nurture and water our seeds of happiness. And in this case, it's practicing kindness, gratefulness, and social connections. So as we practice it more regularly, it develops into a habit and it becomes easier to do. I think sometimes there are certain kind of barriers for us to do something. We may feel a little embarrassed at perhaps offering a colleague a compliment. Oh, you did a really good job there. Oh, that's really great. Or you dealt with that customer really well. Often we don't do that. And also perhaps in Asian culture, we tend to withhold praise in the fear that we may, cause somebody to be too proud of their success. I don't know, that's up to you. But sometimes we find that it's a little difficult to be kind. One of the things that many people say, if I'm kind, maybe people will take advantage of me. Well, that's not your problem, that's their problem. And really, when it comes to cause and effect, if you are kind, then you will reap the rewards of your kindness, and you don't have to worry about how the other person will do in response to your kindness. So every time we do something like this, it gives us a little blip of happiness. We feel good about doing kind things. We also feel good when we think of being grateful for the things that we've been given or things that people have done for us. So these are little blips. But as we know, and also with the law of impermanence, everything will start to fade because it's a temporary thing. Whatever it is, it will start to fade and go back to the original level. So if we do this, practice these kindness elevating practices regularly, then what it is like exercising our happiness muscle. So we get better at it, it's easier for us to do, and it starts to have a long-term effect. So it also becomes a habit. The neurons in our brain actually rewire when we adopt new habits and let go of old ones. You can think of it as like walking through the jungle, and you might be used to walking a certain path, and that's because you've been walking on it and trampling down the grass, or you may be chopping away at the lalang with your parang. The path is quite clear, but maybe you decide to try a different path and you go that way, and you continue to do that every day instead of your old path, and you chop the lalang down and you trample on the grass, and then this new path becomes much easier to walk. There's not so many obstacles. And what happens to the old path is that all the grass and lalang and it will start to grow back, and then after a while there won't be a path there anymore, and this new path is the easier one to go. So that's what happens in our brains, and it's actually a physical thing. In neuroscience, they call it neuroplasticity. So what it means is that your brain actually rewires itself to accommodate new habits. So if you start being kind and grateful and maintaining or developing good, authentic social connections, those areas of your brain which are responsible for that will get stronger. So in terms of Buddhism, we can think of it as changing your karma. Because what is karma? Karma is basically habit thinking, or habits of behavior. So once we change that, that is actually changing our karmic habits. So, maybe that is something that can appeal to you. And one of the best motivations I find of these practices is that when you do it, when you're kind to someone, you help someone, or you express your gratitude to someone, it actually makes you feel good. It either gives you a shot of dopamine or oxytocin. You feel actually kind of warm inside. And that is also a genetic trait, because that is what helps us to survive as a species. It's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the kindest, I think. So, so being kind, being grateful, having good relationships actually makes you feel good. So we like to do things that make us feel good. So that actually acts as a motivator or incentive to help us to do things, so to do these practices. So I hope you can keep that in mind when you start trying out these practices. So, if it sounds like it's too much of an imposition to start a new practice, to do something new, and why can't I just do it once and get it forever? Just think of the jobs we do in our daily lives, or other people that we know. For example, lawyers, doctors, musicians, elite athletes, Olympic athletes, for example, because we have the Olympics on at the moment. Once they reach a certain level, maybe a certain level of expertise or skill, they don't just drop it, and say, okay, I'm great at this now, so I can just drop it and continue. They have to continue to practice. Musicians have to continue to practice, play the guitar, the piano, whatever. Elite athletes, even though they may be Olympic gold medalists, they have to continue to train and to practice at their sport to maintain the level, the elite level. Same with doctors and lawyers. Why do you think we call it practicing medicine or practicing law? It is a practice. If you stop being a doctor for 10 years, you have to actually start practicing it to get into it, because you've forgotten a lot of stuff. It doesn't stay at the same level for forever. So there is actually one very good story about a man called Jascha Heifetz. He was one of the world's greatest virtuoso violinists, and he was recognized as one when he was in his teens, and then he really influenced how violinists play today. So he's actually the greatest, or one of the greatest violinists. And after after 50 years, he was in his 60s or 70s, he said to a reporter, if I don't practice one day, I know it. 2 days, the critics know it. 3 days, the public knows it. So he was very aware that to maintain his sort of prime ability, his virtuoso ability to play the violin, he had to practice every single day. So that's the same with being, if we want to maintain our levels of happiness, we would like to, have a greater sense of well-being, we have to engage in these practices that will benefit it regularly. Even the Buddha, many of us think, he got enlightened, so he must be so blissed out and so cool. Not true. he had to practice. He practiced for hours every day, through until his death. And also my teacher, Zen Master Song San, he practiced chanting the great Dharani constantly. And I saw this with my own eyes. The first time I saw it, I was like, what's he doing? Is there something wrong? Because he was giving a Dharma talk, and then he would, stop, and then the translator would start speaking, and then I would see his mouth move like this. So I thought something was wrong, but then eventually, later I realized he was doing the mantra, the great Dharani mantra, whilst the translator was translating, and then he would stop and speak, and then when he stopped speaking, he would continue at the same place where he left off. He could do so while he said, it was so much a habit that, even in his sleep, in his dreams, he was doing this great Dharani mantra. So it is a practice, and if you want to maintain or sustain your happiness, then we have to put some effort into it. And it's not like it's a difficult thing, I would say. Being kind, being grateful. These are things that actually benefit us individually and all of humanity. If everyone was kind and practiced gratefulness to each other and also maintain good social connections, we'd have a lot more peace and joy in this world, don't you think? So even the Dalai Lama, everybody thinks of him as the ultimate kind of joyful person, compassionate person. And he said, in an interview, I sleep 9 hours a night, which is, I thought, wow, amazing. And I meditate 5 hours a day. And you can see when he walks into the room, and everybody lights up around him. Even now he's in his 80s, but if you look at any of his talks, and people are just joyful around him, and he has this radiance. So happiness is not a condition. It's not something that happens to you, and then that stays with you for forever, happily ever after. It's an ability. You can be happy because it's a choice, and it's a practice that we can engage in. So it may seem a little strange that it is actually a practice. It's like seems to be like, I should be happy, but it is a practice, and you can do it. So it gives you a lot of power to know this, that you can actually choose and practice to be happier. And I would encourage you to try it out. I mean, what do you have to lose? What are the downsides of this? If you look at it from a kind of more of for a risk perspective or whatever you like to do, what are the downsides? And what are the upsides? So I think the downsides are that you just have to invest a little bit of time every week, and the upsides can be great. Who doesn't want to be happier? So how we choose to behave or what we choose to do can have a great impact on our happiness over the long term. And the choice is yours. It always is your choice. You can choose to be happier, to live a happier life with greater well-being, or you could choose not. So it's up to you, and I hope you will give it a try. The Dalai Lama said, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be others to be happy, practice compassion. So it's very simple. So that wraps up our series of discussions on the practice of mindfulness and how we can be happier. And I hope that if you like our Dharma sharings, do give us a thumbs up and share our talks, and do join us again. We are on every Tuesday and Thursday nights, and we will continue with our practice with a different topic next week. So in the meantime, please stay safe, stay well, and stay healthy. And thank you for watching.